Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most beneficent, most merciful. Assalamu alaikum to all my viewers. Peace be with you. Um, I made this video in response to Dominique or Demonique666 and to some of the other people um, who are making anti-Islam videos and F Islam and God knows what else. Now, as far as Demonique, your video Hypocrisy of Muslims, I have a couple of points to make on that, and hopefully I'll try to make this video short. So, okay, now you made a couple of points in your video. You said that hundreds of people were killed during the riots which occurred a few years ago in Muslim countries, and so you were focusing on that, trying to take out your anti-Islam hate. Alright, now one thing I'd like to ask you, and you can research it, is so the hundreds of people killed, who did they kill? Okay, if these are Muslim countries, did they kill other Muslims? Now, how does Islam teach killing other Muslims? What I'd like to tell you is they didn't kill other people. It was actually the protesters who were killed. One thing you have to understand is that in many Muslim countries there are authoritarian dictatorships. I mean, most of these governments were never elected by the people. Yes, they are Western backed, they are oppressive, there is no free speech there. You call yourself a defender of free speech. These governments don't tolerate free speech in these countries. So when these protests came out, at first, I don't believe they were riots at first, but in many governments, any type of protest is banned. No type of public gathering is allowed, because in many cases people are not pro-government, they're anti-government in many areas. So for example, in North Africa, for example, you have regimes there from the time that the French left. I mean, a lot of these governments have been in power since the time that the colonialism was there. And once the colonialists left, they left behind their legacy, which were these oppressive governments who continued the policy of, suppressing the people, not allowing correct leaders to come up, not allowing these countries to develop. So anyway, it was the protesters who were killed. Let's get that clear, okay? Even when the embassies were burned in Lebanon and Syria, I believe, no one was hurt. They had evacuated out of the area, but they weren't hurt. And one other thing about the newspaper which published these pictures, I'm not sure exactly what kind of intellectual message they were trying to send, but what I'd like to ask you is, why didn't that same newspaper post a picture of Prophet Jesus or Christ? There was a picture sent there. It was quite anti-Christian. It was a picture of him. I believe he was crucified and he was erecting. Okay, so why wasn't the naked picture of him published in the newspaper, but the anti-Muslim pictures and anti-Islam pictures were posted? If you're talking about free speech, then is it only okay to offend Muslims, but it's not okay to hurt other people? Why is there this big focus on only Muslims, and as if other people aren't hurt either? You guys don't focus on hurting other people, it's just Muslims you focus on. And so, I mean, I'd like for you to go out and research, why wasn't this anti-Christian picture published, but anti-Muslim was? So is this really about free speech, or is it about hurting Muslims, hating Islam? Is it just about purely for hate? Is that what people are trying to do? Just get these Muslims crazy and, then make fun of them later on? Alright, and one other thing is that we live in a very tense world today. We have the United States in the Middle East. There's a huge war. Close to 1 million people have died over there. So, and yes, it is being perceived as an attack on Islam, not just Muslims. This is a war on Islam that people are seeing. So that puts into context why the riots began in the first place. If people already had an idea that the West is attacking Islam and Muslims and their civilization, then and now they hear that, look, these newspapers are putting out these rabidly anti-Islam things in their media, across the European countries. People would get angry about that, but instead of getting angry, I think people should talk about it. Yes, they should have intellectual discussions, and I would like for you guys to do the same. Because yes, if these people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, then why do you resort to it as well? Cursing, getting angry. Angry isn't going to help us. Okay, it's not going to help Muslims, and it's not going to help anyone else. Now you say that Islam is intolerant. I don't believe that's the case. As a practicing Muslim all my life, someone who studied Islam, no, I'm not saying that I'm a scholar, but thankfully I do have some knowledge about Islam. God knows best to what extent, but I believe Islam is quite tolerant. It does respect other religions, that people do have the freedom to practice other religions. Many of the things out in the media in this anti-Islam campaign I've been seeing over the last few years, they've been trying to teach, Islam teaches to kill other people. If you're not a Muslim, you're going to be killed. Now that's totally incorrect. The Prophet, peace be with him, he never taught that, to kill other people. In fact, as far as I know, the word infidel itself is a Christian word. It's an English word. It doesn't have an Islamic root. Now the word is kufr. If you mean disbeliever, the real meaning of kufr or kafir is someone who hides the truth. Okay, so the meanings of these words, they put a lot of other things into context as well. But that's another subject. Now let's see. Okay, you say, okay, as far as, again, based on, the intolerant, actually, I believe, like I said, Islam has given rights to other religions, and you were talking about anti-Jew as well. I don't believe that's the historical fact, that Muslims were anti-Jew, always oppressing Jews, because Jews did rise to prominence in many Muslim empires, including the Ottoman Empire, across the Middle East, in Iran, in North Africa, in Muslim Spain. So what I'm saying is that they were given the freedom to practice their religion. You'll find many old synagogues in many of these places, churches. Yes, Muslims had control in many of these areas where there were Christians. And for example, in Egypt and other parts of the Middle East, there are millions of Christians there. And Jews, there are big populations of Jews as well. So if Islam was so intolerant and anti the other, anti non-Muslim, why would these places of worship still be there? Why would there still be these big minority groups, including in Iraq and other places, if Muslims were so oppressive? Okay, that's something to think about. If these Muslims weren't taught, to be tolerant towards other people, why would they still be here after centuries? Okay, and there weren't wars fought. For example, there weren't hundreds of wars going over centuries in these areas. These people lived peacefully over there. Now, let's see.